The abdominal region, we're going to see the abdominal aorta. The descending aorta went through the thorax, but we don't get to see it here, passed through the diaphragm at the T12 vertebral level and became abdominal aorta. The abdominal aorta has both paired branches and unpaired branches. The paired branches supply mostly the muscle walls, with a few exceptions, and the unpaired branches supply the viscera of the abdomen. At T12, we see two things happening here on this model, and it really looks like one. This vessel is branching from the aorta and coming up onto the bottom of the diaphragm. There should be two of those, one to each side. This is called the inferior phrenic artery. The next vessel comes out, and it's called the celiac trunk, and it branches into three branches. And we can see those three branches here. We can see the splenic artery heading over here to the spleen. This branch is called the left gastric artery, and the third branch is the common hepatic artery going to the liver. So here we had inferior phrenic. This other one that branches into three is the celiac trunk, T12 vertebral level. At the L1 vertebral level, we have an artery coming out called the superior mesenteric artery. That's going to supply the majority of our small intestine and a little bit of the stomach. You'll learn that in lecture. Also at L1, we have arteries leaving the abdominal aorta going into the kidneys. Those are the renal arteries. Then we continue down. At L2, we have two arteries leaving either side. Those are the gonadal arteries going to either the ovaries or the testicles. If we knew this was a male, these would be testicular arteries. If we knew this was female, these would be ovarian arteries. At L3, we see the inferior mesenteric artery supplying the lower portion of the large intestine. And then at L4, the abdominal aorta bifurcates into the common iliac arteries. The common iliac arteries then divide into internal iliac arteries, which will dive into the pelvis, and external iliac arteries, which will continue out into the lower extremity to become the femoral artery. Also on this plaque, coming from L4 straight down into the pelvis, we see what is called the middle sacral artery. If we look at the venous supply in the abdomen, we can see that this inferior vena cava is actually coming up through the abdomen. Remember that we have started near the feet with the venous drainage, and we're going to bring the blood up from the lower extremities through the abdominal cavity, through the inferior vena cava to the heart. So if we look in the abdomen, we can see that the inferior vena cava is traveling upwards inside the abdomen, and it's going to pick up various venous drainage along the way. Most importantly on this particular model is we can see the renal veins coming from the kidneys into the inferior vena cava. Notice those renal veins are passing on this side in front of the aorta and are anterior to the renal arteries. So here we see the renal veins coming into the inferior vena cava, and then the inferior vena cava going up through the vena cava hiatus of the diaphragm into the right atrium of the heart. But I want you to pay particular attention right here around the liver, because here's where the abdomen differs a little bit. The liver has veins that drain into the inferior vena cava. Those are called hepatic veins, and you can see them here on blue, draining the liver into the inferior vena cava. However, in the abdomen, all your abdominal viscera, which your spleen and your small intestine and your large intestine, they all drain into a series of veins that will form what is called the hepatic portal vein. That takes blood from the abdominal viscera into the liver. So on this model, you can see here, it's kind of a brownish purple color. Here's the splenic vein, and here is one of the other branches of the hepatic portal vein, and yet another. All of these will converge to form the hepatic portal vein, which goes into the liver. So the vein going into the liver, hepatic portal vein. The veins coming out of the liver to the inferior vena cava are hepatic veins. Do not confuse the two.